So, hello to everyone, and today in this video, I'm going to show some specific places that I didn't show in the last video. So there's a couple of moments that I made some mistakes in the previous videos, and I'm going to solve that, correct them. So that is why also I'm going to create a new feature, authentication feature that should be so in our project. Then we will write a couple of tests for those two features. The first feature that we created in the previous video, and the second one I will create right now. Then we will write tests, and first of all we have to solve some problems there. That is why there is a Telegram channel, and I will put this Telegram channel down in the description. That is why I made some problem, and I faced some problem, and I was doing that not properly. That is why there was one problem in my project, and I've learned that in a real projects people may not know about some specific places, especially about BLoC. For example, there's a zones exist in Flutter that catches specific errors that might happen in project, and I have shown you in the previous video that how does the how zones work in a real statements. That is why you have to watch the previous video first of all, then come to this one. And that is why there was a moment that BLoC and zones were working not properly, and I've come to the conclusion that I have to ask some people specific that community, Flutter community in Telegram channel. I will put this link down in the description, but I have to mention that there is a Russian community, Russian speaking community, and yeah, you may ask them anything you want in English. They have to. I know that they'll answer you in English. Doesn't matter. They're very friendly people there. So that is why, and I asked them that what should happen when there is a problem will happen in a BLoC. So when there is a problem here, there is an exception that you're catching in a BLoC. It should not be going outside from the observer. There is an observer that I've created in the last video. Observer is some kind of places also that you can see your logs. You can log what kind of BLoC is creating, what kind of BLoC is disposing, like closing, or maybe you can see what kind of errors happening in which BLoC. This kind of moments exist there. That is why observer helps us to observe what's happening in our BLoC, all of our BLoCs. That is why excuse me. That is why I've created a BLoC observer. There's some place we have to solve them. Then we can go on in our next sections. For example, there is a to-do features that we have BLoC, and something happens in our BLoC, in our data source repository. That repository may throw an error. For example, you are creating to-do and something happens in your BLoC, in your data sources that you're not catching them. For example, if you caught your exception, you can do something, but all unhandled, uncaught exceptions will go, like they will propagate to other, like up to this like code. They will go to the BLoC, after BLoC to some places. That is why, in order to not throw an error to the widgets, you have to do something. You have to do, first of all, for example, we created a try catch there. There's only one try catch, and instead of doing error throw with stack trace, it will throw your error to your, I would say, let's run our application. So instead of throwing your error to their zones, you have to write on error here. Why, you may ask? Because you will be in a situation that you can write tests. That is why in this section, in this video, I'm going to write a test. I'm going to write tests for all blocks, for all features that we are doing. First of all, we will create some authentication, then authentication feature. Then after that, we will write tests. So there is to-do app. Okay, our application ran. It's running. So let me show you. For example, you have as we write in the previous video, we have a zones. There is a zone error. Also, you have to do something that this exception that may happen inside this one, it should not go to the zones. For example, app runner. Everything that happens, every exception that happens in your project, in your BLoC, should remain in the BLoC. It should not go in the other side of code to the widget some places. So that is why, let me show you. For example, you don't have any error here, and by default let me show you, there is a let me remove that and we will see what's happened. So after this, try catch, then we will write here throw an error, throw exception, and we'll see what happens. So to do load event, it loads over. You can see from here that something happening. So let's see. Error from BLoC. Error from BLoC, and let me show you something else. Error zone. Look, the same exception was caught twice. It's like duplication. It should not happen. For example, look, there is an exception that happened in zones, and because of that, we wrote this kind of thing here. If we remove that, we'll not catch our exception in a zone. Let me show. For example, you wrote here, there is no error zone from here. So that is why we don't have to write errors thrown with stack trace in BLoC. You don't have to. It should not be thrown like from BLoC to someone else. Everything that happens in your BLoC, every exception should be handled inside the BLoC, like BLoC observer maybe, or maybe in a BLoC. That is why the best solution for that is BLoC observer. Any error that happens in your BLoC should be handled here. You can log them here. You can send them to the Sentry. You can send them to the Crashlytics somewhere else in order to handle the exceptions. So that is why we don't have to write errors to throw with stack trace here. So you may ask that there is a error is happening here, yeah. And there is no error from BLoC also here. look, you have to somehow catch your exception. Yeah, for example, doesn't matter, I'm just writing for the tests that there is an exception here, it's happening. Maybe in your repositories, your repository is throwing error, exception, anything. Just for test, I wrote here. So if we restart, we can see that there is no any error from BLoC is happening. It should be thrown to your BLoC observer that we created in a previous video. So that is, it should happen. This kind of error should happen here, but it's not happening. It's not coming here. An exception is not coming here. Because of that, we remove this one. Because of this, we could handle our exception both in a BLoC observer and in a zone. That is why if I uncomment it here, we can handle it twice. It should not happen here. That is why, as I said, all exceptions should go to the BLoC observer, and anything you should do here, like logging, sending to the Crashlytics, sending to your own server in order to catch errors, or Sentry. Doesn't matter where it is. You can handle the exception right here. That is why we will go remove this, and instead of this, you can see that it's error from BLoC and error from zone twice. It's the same error happening twice. Look, to the BLoC, the same error. But we don't want to send this error twice to Crashlytics or maybe to your server, own server. So what you can do, in order to prevent duplication, instead of error stack trace, you can write on error or even add error. It's the same thing, because look, when we do on error, it's some kind of thing that sends your exception to the BLoC observer. And in our situation, our BLoC observer is this kind of file that we created here. So that is why you can either call on error or add error stack trace. That's all. Stack trace is by default, it's not necessary, I guess, in this kind of. Look, the same function calls on error, the previous function that we called. That is why you can call them, these two functions, you can call them both, you can call both of them. So it's right, it's correct. There is no any problem here. You can either call add error or on error. So that is why we will call other add error here. So excuse me. So look, now our error zone should not handle any error in this kind of situation. So if we restart our application, we can see all the error from BLoC. So only from here, from our observer the place, it's a place, some kind of place that should handle your exception, do whatever you do, like sending. That's all. It should not go to the zones. So that is why if we search for our error zone, there is no any exceptions here. Look. So that is why you have to write some kind of logic inside your own error that sends your exceptions to your server, Sentry, or even Crashlytics. So we can copy this and put this right here. So we can say that if we are in a release mode, send our error exceptions to the error with stack trace to the server. So this kind of error, will be sent to the Crashlytics or even to your server or even to your Sentry. So that is all I wanted to show you. So we can remove this one. Everything is working pretty fine here. So our exception is throwing to the BLoC observer, and there is no any code exception will be thrown from a BLoC observer to your app runner, to your nearest zone, I would say. So that is why you can use this one or Sentry, whatever you want to use, or if you have your own logic to handle errors, you can use that one. But for now, it's good to use this kind of error handling for now, for testing. So that is why we can continue, we can go on. What should I do? So there's only one try catch. Try catch should send an error to a BLoC observer, and that's all. Will be handled here. Okay. Let's commit our actions, everything that we have done. So fix, edit, new logic for handling exceptions, preventing propagation, So first of all, let's create another feature, as I said, because there's only one feature in our application, and when the beginners come and see this video, they may ask that how can I create another feature? That is why remember that when you are creating a features, your BLoC should not be like work with context, build context. There's a lot of people I've seen that they send, especially about myself. If I talk about myself, I've used context in a BLoC. That also there is a, I guess, in a Felix Angelov or Felix, there's a article that he says that you have to like prevent sending your context to the BLoC. There is a Flutter BLoC documentation, BLoC doc. So there is a linter. You can see that you don't have to use context, everything that relates to the Flutter. You don't have to send them to the BLoC. So there is a linter exists there. BLoC lint. Include. There's a BLoC lint package. I've never used that before, but I read somewhere recently that, not recently, I knew that about this one, that you don't have to send context, you don't have to combine, somehow send your blocks to another BLoC. Don't have to do that. There is well, there's a BLoC tools. What was there? So avoid build context extensions. There's not that thing that I'm searching for. So I wanted to say that you don't have to use some kind of problems that may happen in your project. That is why you have to somehow you don't have to send okay. you don't have to send build context, you don't have to send your BLoC to another BLoC in order to just do something. That is why the best solution for that, it's learning about loose coupling and high cohesion. So everything is appearing in Russian, I don't know why. Coupling in computer science. Coupling is a degree of interdependence between software modules, a measure of how closely connected two routines or modules are. You can see that coupling is not binary but multidimensional. It's the best, I would say, it's the best software I would say some kind of okay. There is the best software pattern, I would say, in order to use. There's this picture that shows that this kind of thing is good. There should be like loose coupling and high cohesion. So it means that two features, two modules should be loose coupled to each other. And also high cohesion means that the same module should do the same logic. It's the best explanation, I would say. So it's like solids, as the letter S is solid, like single responsibility. Like it means that the same module should do some same responsibilities with the loose coupling to another module, I would say. So that is why let's go and create our another feature. We'll call it authentication. So what's happening? Features. Oh. So we'll create our BLoC. We'll create our data. We'll create our what was that? Data and widgets. That's all, I guess. So that is why in order to create the data, so we have to have some kind of tables. I guess it will be user table. Because of that, we are working locally. That we don't have any server. We have to create migrations. We have to create tables, and that is why I don't remember how to create migration. We will go through the documentation and we'll see together, because I don't remember that. So user table class, I guess it's a user table extends table drift, yeah. So let's go to the drift docs Flutter. ID title created at. Okay, what we have in this is we have to create our model first of all. So our model will have user model, or just the user, whatever you can call, whatever you want. You can call them whatever you want. User model class user model. So we have int ID. We have final string name. We have final string email, and we have string surname. So there is some kind of how to call that, rules, I would say, that you have to do. For example, you have to write a code that don't change your properties in your class directly, like immutable from foundation. So what does it mean? It means that all of your fields properties in your class should be final. If you do something like that, it will throw an error and it will say that your class is immutable. That is why one or your instance are final. That is why you have to write your code in a way that every field that you're creating should be in final, like properties. I mean, not functions, but this one. Functions don't have any final, I guess, just keyword. So also it means that you when you are creating the user model, your constructor should be constant. That is why every field of yours, because of that, every field of yours is final. That is why in the future, in order to change a model, you will copy that. So we'll write const user model. So will it help? So email required in this surname. Surname. This is and so because of that you have to write there is some kind of package that I've installed. It's I don't remember, but it's I guess this is section. Well, plugins. So there is a plugin that I've installed. It's I guess I have to update them all. It's I guess the name of that plugin. Dark data classes, I guess this one, if I'm not mistaken. I guess this one. Yeah, probably should be this one. So it's some kind of package that will save my time instead of writing all the necessary things like equality or maybe the JSON methods from JSON factory. Some kind of place it will save my time. That is why instead of that, just I will write this one. So we need only data class section that will create specific thing for us. So we will fix some places ourselves. So we don't have any to map, from map, or maybe if you need, you can write this one. Just leave them all. If you don't need, just remove these twos. So there is a conception exist in Flutter, especially in a prototype model. Maybe I have taught you in a previous video. Did I? Yeah, about this value getter. If you watch my previous video, you can know more about value getter. But for now, the main thing here is that you don't have to write some kind of code, and that is why you have to write a code that. So because of that, our fields are not nullable. So all three of them are required. That is why the only thing that you can do is just for surname. But other things, it's because of that they are required. You have to use rather the nullable ID that you're sending, or maybe this name, this property, this class property. Because of that, the three of them are nullable. So that is why you can write the loop getter here. Oh. String. Don't have this one. So that's all. It means that you can write or nullable. You can write. You can send or null or just a value for this one. And you can, because of that, if you want to know more about this one, I have taught in a previous video. You can watch that. If it's not null, you can use surname. Otherwise, that's good. So because of that, we have ID, name, email, surname, or even you can. Okay, that's enough, I guess. Because of that, you can write columns for them. So we have in column get ID, I guess, integer required. It's required, yeah. It's required. So after increments, also after increment. So we have text column, name, get name, text, nullable, it's not nullable, text, column, email, which is not nullable too, so we have a surname, which is null, yeah. The Gemini, it's a Gemini AI assistant that is helping to me writing some code instead of me. Okay, so let's go take a look about the migrations. Just a migration. So I don't remember how to do that. That is why let's first of all take a look what's happening. I guess that we have to create this build YAML file. I remember that we have some kind of helpers that will help us to migrate from one version of database to another one. So that is why I guess that we can handle that ourselves. So let's go create getting started. Exporting schemas. What is exporting schemas? I guess that we don't have this one. We don't need this one. Schema migration. This we'll need this one. So let's go. Build YAML file. So there's a build YAML file. So we will create. Do we have any build YAML? No. So build YAML file. It's not our file. It's a YAML file. Build YAML file. So we can copy them all, put here, and we need only my database, not the DB. A name for the database and its path required. A name for the database and its path. So we have, I guess, we called our database as to do database. We put like this one. We will remove this and our path to our database. So copy path. We need lib src common app database, this one. So we have to copy path references. You can come here and see there is a lib. Both of them the same, no? Lib src common, lib src common database app databases. Yeah. So we can put this here. So you can also optionally specify the directory with the test file in schema. We don't, and we will not write any tests for our database. That is why I don't need this one for now. So before you start making change to your initial database schema, run this command to generate initial schema file. So let's go. We have built, I guess, build YAML. Build, yeah, it's generating. So let's see what happens. Ref schemas. Okay. Dart run make migrations. Once you're happy with the changes, pump the schema version in your database class and run this command again. Okay, let's go to our database, change our schema version to the second version of our database and run this again. The same command line, oh, that's all I guess. Let's see what happens. Another thing that schema version, the second version of our database happen here. So there is a bump because the tables have changed. Okay. Let's put our database, I guess, here, our new table, user table. So create table. On upgrade, create table. Okay. So we will go in here after our migration. Let's write migration. So return this migration strategy to get migration strategy. So does it have on upgrade? Okay, it has on upgrade. Let me check. So we have a step by step. This one step by step. For 1 to 2. Migration and schema. Migration and schema. Yes, it should be 2 of them there. And they have to asynchronously run some kind of command, I guess, yeah. Await migration. Migration steps. No. It's create table. Schema dot. Not those. There's another thing. Let me check. Let's run our dart run build runner. So create table, schema, user table. I guess that you have to somehow do you know what should be. So let's delete this one, delete this one, build YAML, and what else we created? We have created, there's a test, I guess, generate migration test. We don't need this one either for now. So that is why. Also we have to comment this one for a while. Let's do this one. We didn't have any this one, so let's go do first of all from the beginning. It said that we have to run this. Okay, so after that we added this, and also we have to add our user table. User table, was it there? User table, user table. Okay, user table. So in a second schema version after changing, we have to run this one once again. Let's see what happens. Okay, so step by step. Okay, now user table is available. So I guess on create we have to add this one too. Create all, yeah. Let me check something. So I'm looking for something, for some code that I guess that I used some kind of migrations there. That is why I'm looking for that. So let's check. I guess that is what I wanted to say you. Everything that we wanted to do. So let's open our what I was looking for. What was I looking for? It was the migration, some kind of code that existed, and I didn't know that this kind of code is doing migration for us. That is why there is no necessity for creating some kind of another class that runs for migration. That is why it's enough for us. There is a step-by-step migration that does exactly the same from one version to another one, from one to another version. That is why I don't have to do anything. Just let's go and check. Right now we have some kind of two tables. We have to see another table here. So let's go and run our application from the beginning. Let's see what happens. So everything is working pretty fine. User table appear here. So everything is working pretty good. Creating table, create all, everything is working now. There's no any exception. So that is why if you want to create another table, just you will go create your table, just add your table here for this array, then change your schema version. After that, run this command from the documentation again. That's all. That's all. After that, there will be another from 2. There is no from 1 2. There will be from 2 to 3 version, like step by step. After that, you will add this line, and you can go and check the documentation, because there is an add column. You may add a new column to your database. So that is why you can check. There's not necessity to write on upgrade from 2. That is why we, for the migrations, we did this kind of thing. So in order to add only one field, some kind of things, just check the documentation. There's a the migrator IP. So there is a lot of code for that helps us for migrations. Alter table migration. So yeah, there is another, like some kind of table migration. They like this one, column transformer. So you want to category change to the integer, like it should be like integer. So there is a table you have. It was text, and after some migration you change that to the integer. So you will write this kind of migration. So just check the documentation, or ask the ChatGPT. ChatGPT will help you how to write migrations. So as we created our table for our user table, let's create a data source for that. So let's first of all create a database helper. So user database helper. It will be a class that will create our user, or maybe even delete. It will be like our server, that some kind of logic exists in our server, like logging out, some kind of logic. Database helper, it will have our app database, and we will write the logic. So in order to send our app database to this one. So what is the reason of creating user database helper here? It's because of we will write tests for our BLoC database data widgets in the future. That is why we have to do user database helper here. So it's enough for us right now. So because let's future user model, it will return user model. create user. So we have to send. We have to send not user model. We have to send string name. Required final string name. Required final string. That was email. And what else? No, it's not required for the final, but surname like this one. So wait app database. App database into users table, app database user table. Insert. So what kind of user table data? User table data. Final user table data. User table data companion. What is this one? If everything is working good, we will return as a user model. So, what should it? Integer. It returns an integer. We need this one. So it returns user data. That's all. Create user and delete user. We have to create future boolean that deletes our user. The function that deletes our user. That is what we will send integer ID. So asynchronous code. We have to await database delete database user table. Some kind of this. Then delete. Have to run this delete. No. It should be like where or where. ID is equals to ID. Then if I'm not mistaken, it should be like this one. So this one. Let me check. oh, yeah, like this one. Then go. Not go, that should be delete. Let me check it out. That's all. So, let's commit this one. So, let's check. So I guess that the app database tab should now be in a git ignore. So data will create our repository. Let's go. Authentication repository. Authentication data source struct interface class. We have to connect. We have to run our database, local database from something. That is why repository and data source exist there. You may have two data sources that will be connected to your repository. For example, you don't have any local, you don't have internet connection, and the local data source will help you for a while, like doing some stuff locally, and after when you will be available to connect in a internet connection to the internet. So after that, all that stuff that happened locally will be sent to the server, like some like stuffs like this one, as I have shown you in a previous video, like to this data source. Where like you have local remote data source, or maybe local. There's two stuffs here, and both of them will be connected. These two data sources that implement our interface will be connected to your repository, like this one. Like you have remote data source, but because of that we don't have any server right now. To do remote data source will be like, we don't use this one, but to do local data source will be worked. So that is why you have to check whether we have any internet connection or not, some like stuff like this one. So that is why. Let's do our authentication data source, but it is in your interface. So that is why. Let's do, in order to show you once again, we will create our class authentication remote data source, which implements our this one. And we have final class authentication local data source, or you can call them services, doesn't matter. So that is why we have also authentication repository abstract interface class. I guess that there is only one implementation to your repositories, but in the future you can create like 2 or more of them. It's not like too much like in the rules. I would say it's not required there's only to be only one repository in your project, like in your feature. You can create 2 or more implementation of your repository, but I guess that there's only one should be enough. So authentication repository, copy them, make this as interface class implementation implements e authentication repository, and because of that we have future user model, so we will not call it like a create user, but with login, and we have user that we have to send all this stuff, so this one. Then we have delete user, like logout. For now it takes only ID, so we will copy the same logic and put in our data source. Of this it also should do exactly the same thing, but there's only another thing. So user model, should it return a nullable object here? So let's go change some kind of places here. It could remain, or it can remove. It can return a nullable thing. So that is why let's do some kind of stuff like this one. No, not here. Excuse me. You have to write it right in your repository. So repository should handle that logic. So future null, value of nullable, logout returns. Because of that we don't have any server, that is why by default we are returning some kind of values for our removed data source. That's not necessary for us. We are working only with local data source, so that is why let's go. We have to have our, I would say, our class that we will I would say that we will test them in the future. That is why I guess that we have to send our user database helper, So that's all. And I guess that we have to change them in a to-dos block as well, or excuse me, in a data source as well. There's a local implementation. Okay. So we already changed that. Excuse me. We are doing everything correctly. So we have a user database helper. So we can call our login. So create user, surname. It will remove call of a user model. Then for our logout, we'll do this one. So everything is connected right now. So we will write our logic for our BLoC then. Let's go. Because of that, as I said in the previous videos, we don't have any freeze package. We are not using freeze package. There's no freeze, but freeze helps us to not write a lot of code. So freeze is very helpful if you're using that for only BLoC. I use them only for BLoC, not for like models, entities, like something. I've seen a lot of people doing that. I don't do that. This model is enough, I guess. There's only one model which is enough. So that is why we'll create our BLoC. So let's write that authentication BLoC. So there is a authentication event, and there is a authentication state. So it's a sealed class. So there is a authentication initial state, extend authentication state, extend, so we have authentication in progress state, so we have 4 states for our BLoC: initial, in progress, completed. Like maybe you can call them authenticated state. Or you can, instead of calling error state, you can like create unauthenticated state. So let's go connect our states so it become more easier to use. So authentication state, const factory authentication state dot initial. We are calling our authentication initial state, so we have to use constant constructor for all of them as well. In progress, so we have error in authenticated state. In authenticated state, we have the user model there. So in order, like if you remember, your state, it's like a variable that holds something in it. So that is why, like, remember, just imagine that your state, your states is some kind of variable or maybe box that handles that keeps something inside itself. That is why whenever our state is authenticated, that there should be user model there. That is why it has some kind of sense. It has sense that we have to use our model exactly in a authenticated state. So there is no initial in progress. It means that we are like sending request to the server. Error, we don't have any user because it's our state is error and authenticated. So that is why I will show you how to say that. How to I want to show you how to react to your states properly. Because of that, we have BLoC builder, BLoC listener, and also you can use some kind of streams. But because of that, we are using BLoC builder. That's enough, I guess. In order to make it easier to understand for beginners, that is why I will use only BLoC builder or maybe BLoC listener. So we create our state, so we will go and create our events. So I guess that there's only one event in our BLoC, I guess. There's another 2 events, I guess. It's for authentication, for login and for logout. So let's go final class authentication authentication login event extends event authentication event. So we have to send some kind of yeah, there's AI is helping me. So will AI help me again? AI is helping. So there is another event which calls authentication logout event. So AI help me. Okay, that's, I guess that's enough. Yeah. So we'll create our factories. AI is helping me. Okay, just stop the video and just write it. So our login, that constant factory that we're creating, should be exactly the same as our event, another class that we're creating. So that is why this kind of parameters will be sent to this URL. That is why the same thing should be inside. That is why if you're creating an our stream name email string, like email and names are required, so this should be required too. Our surname is not required, should be the exact same as final, like both of them are the same, I would say. So let's go and okay, in our authentication we didn't use our user model. Because of that, our user model is required here. It's a parameter that is required. Just we do user model, that's all. So we will create our BLoC, authentication BLoC extends BLoC. So authentication event, authentication state. You can do either, just not like this one. You can say that it's the part of authentication BLoC. It's like a delegate that I taught you in a previous lesson. So remove this one and do part of, it's the part of authentication BLoC. Okay, so whenever we do like this one, in order to import our model, it will not be, so we have to do something else here. It's the part of our BLoC is authentication event, and part of our BLoC is also authentication state. So that is why when we didn't import them, so that is why in order to import user model, it will import not inside the authentication step but inside the BLoC. That's all. So we will add our repository, authentication repository. It should be an interface. So we will add our logger if you want. I guess that's all. So will AI help me? Okay, let's write that ourselves. Required final authentication repository, and also we have to add our logger. You have to required final logger. So we have to call our super. So in order to write tests for initial state that you want to use, you can nullably send our state, like initial state is. If there is no initial state, we will use initial state from the box, from the our state initial state that we created recently. So we added that, so we have to write our own handler that will work with our state. But right now, because of that, we have only 2 events. That's enough, I guess. Yeah, event emit, so switch our event and check how many events we have there in order to remove or just prevent the race condition. We use, as I said in the previous video, we use sequential events, sequential transformer, which until the first event ends, the second one will never start. So let's go create function for them. So what else should I do? So it's login. So we have to write some kind of code here. Try catch an object. On object error trace. So there is I guess I didn't write the same thing in a BLoC. On object catch this one, you have to do something like this one. So we will emit our error state and add error to the observer, as I said in the beginning of this video. So in the progress, we will authenticate. If user not know, we will authenticate, and otherwise it will be error state or maybe initial state. Yeah, that's good. That's not error. Initial is enough, I guess. Then in our logout, we have to do similar thing, but we have to check whether if it's not authenticated state, if we are not authenticated like authenticated state, if we are not authenticated, so we will return, then write logout. State with no user. Final current state as authentication. This one. So user model will send ID. We say if logout, then we can change that to the initial state. Otherwise, it's error state. So that's all, I guess. The logic is enough. So everything is enough for BLoC. If you want to use logger, you just use logger in order to print the log some moments. Then let's go and create our. So because of that, this authentication block is, I would say, is a dependency, is some kind of thing controller, I would say, that should be keep in the whole project, in the whole entire project. This authentication block helps us for our entire project. That is why we have to keep them in a specific place as we created in the previous log. So we have to keep that our authentication logic in here authentication block, our authentication block inside BLoC inside our dependency container. So this container will be necessary for testing. So we created our authentication block. So we need authentication block here. There is why we will create a BLoC authentication block here. Authentication BLoC. So it should take a logger, internet connection, all of them. So that is why I forgot to, I guess, write the logic for our repository, implementation for our repository. So that is why our implementation will take exactly authentication, authentication data source, authentication remote data source, authentication data source, authentication local data source, and also we have to add internet connection checker. So all of them should be, I guess, private. So will they help me? Yes. So that is why we have to check them whether we have internet connection. Await. If we have access to our internet connection, we will call our authentication remote data source, and we will call login here, and also surname. If we don't have any internet connection, then we will create not but local. But look, because of that, we don't have any server for now. That is why we will comment these ones for now. And just check this one, just check them sync, login, logout. It uses logout, takes only integer ID, and that's all. It should do the same thing here. So remote data source, internet checker. Okay, so let's go to our authentication block. We have to create our authentication data source authentication data source implementation local local authentication local data source authentication local data source final authentication data source authentication local. This one is remote data source. That's it's working. Okay, so we need our final user database helper user database helper at database. Oh, okay, we'll send it to our. Then we have to create our repository exactly. Final user authentication repository. So then return our authentication block with this repository and logger. That's all. So authentication block, we have authentication block, we'll call him here final authentication we'll send him all necessary things. Authentication block. Well, like this one, then put it here. That's all. So we created our dependency, everything. Then after creation of our dependency, that will be kept in a whole project, entire project. After that, we will go to our authentication feature and create exactly authentication widget. It will be stateful authentication widget scaffold. So in order to take our that authentication block, we have to do something like this one. Authentication block. So in its state, we don't have to dispose that because it should be used in the entire project. If we do dispose for our authentication block, it will not work. That is why you don't have to close them. So we have to take our dependencies through the inherited widget. Dependencies scope. There's a listen. Is this? No. So that's all. Authentication block, authentication dependencies, authentication block. That's all. So we can go here in app bar. We can write app bar title text authentication. Okay. Then we can write body. In a body we can write block builder text state. So in a block builder we can return custom scroll view. So we use our block that we created inside our dependency container. Then we have a slivers. We can write that switch our state. We will switch our state. We will check whether what kind of state we are right now. So our state is not determined right now. That is why we will write authentication BLoC with authentication state. So right now switch will know what kind of state we have. So if our state is initial, we will use sliver fill remaining trial. We will use column, and we will write some kind of another logic, another UI here. But right now, let's go to this one, sliver fill remaining, which represents that it's in progress. That is why we will write just a center child circular progress indicator. It's enough. For this one, let's see what we have. So for this one, if our state is error, what we can do? We can use the sliver fill remaining to write child, and for the child, we will write text button text. We'll use a refresh, or maybe try again. For the authentication state, for now we don't have to use, just we will write sliver fill remaining, but we will write center. I will do something else. Text authenticated. So if it's authenticated, that is why we have to we don't have to show all the authenticated. Once we are authenticated, we have to redirect our widget, our screen to another one. So that is why instead of using BLoC builder, there is, I guess, BLoC consumer that uses builder and also listener, which is necessary to listen what kind of state we are right now. So listener takes the context and listener, okay, the state. So we will say that if our state is authenticated state, authentication, we have to navigator push and remove until we have to push or maybe close all of the screens that we have and push to another one. So that is why we will write material page road context to our to-dos config. This is easy to do config, something like this one, yeah. To-dos widget, there is a to-dos. Okay, to-dos widget. Okay, instead of using in a home screen to-dos widget in a home screen, we have to use our authentication widget. So it's not using anymore. That is why we will do here. We'll put that in a to-dos widget. So let's go. Authentication. Okay, everything is good. So that is why we have to write some logic for authentication. So we have to have text field. There should be 3 text field, and then text button when we elevated button, text authenticate, login. Name, email, surname. Okay, let's let's use some kind of paddings. Then let's create controllers for them. Final text editing controller, name controller. Email surname controller. Then after that we have to dispose them because we don't need them anymore. So that is why dispose method should work, but not for authentication block. Authentication block should not be disposed anywhere. So because it's for entire project. So after that we have to use our controllers here. Controller, name controller, what is that? Email controller, and then exactly surname controller. So you can check. So final name, but it's string. So like this one. Then check if the name is empty or email is empty. We'll return that. But if the surname is empty, we'll send null, otherwise surname. Okay, so let's check our logic in a BLoC that it sends surname, integration, the user model. So let's check. It will not do anything. Or even you can use scaffold messenger of context shows snack bar text field required fields, like with name and email. So field required field name and female. So there is, you can name check. That's all. So let's check our here in the user table. We create surname, email, and our necessary things here. That is what should we do. We can either do to-dos table with a specific user table, user ID. I guess it's good because when we authenticated, we can use our specific user from authentication in order to get that specific to-dos from specific user. So that is why it's not so hard, I guess. That is why in order there's only one thing that you can do. It's only adding new field. So that is why let's go to the documentation and check how you can add new field for your alter table. So deleting columns, changing columns, adding columns, changing a type of column, configuration, new column, adding new columns, as so. Okay. Adding new column. The easiest way to add new columns is to simply use add column method on migrator. That's all I use. Okay. So let's go to our database tables. First of all, we have a to-do table. We can do something like this one. Integer int column get user ID. Okay. then integer, so named, named user ID. Is it nullable? It's not nullable, I guess. So do we have any data there? Yeah, we have data. So it's nullable, I guess, because of to not make any mistakes, to not make any exceptions. So we use our user ID, nullable, integer, and that's all. Let's go to our to-do. We have to create a final int user ID. It should nullable, I guess, not now. This user ID. To map its user ID. Then in a BLoC, what do we have? Okay, we can keep our user inside our completed, I guess. So because of that we have some kind of place. See, to this, to this, to this. Okay, state dot user model. What was that? Work, my brother. So in initial, what do we have there? A load, huh? Is it load? So is it load? Yeah, it's load. So in a load event, we have to send our user model in order to save that in our to-dos. Because of that, we are authenticated and we have to save that user in our to-dos block. And after that, we can work with that user model, specific that user model. So event user model, here we can use state, not state, our let's do it better. So then final current state as to do's, completed state, take this one instead of that, and then use user model here, right here. So here exactly same thing, I guess, yeah. This. Is here exactly same thing? Exactly. User model. Then in our to-dos widget, because of that we have our controller, we have our all necessary things. We can use dependency scope, authentication block, state. So because of that, in this specific place, until our state is not authenticated, we will not push that. No, not well. That is why we can either use our state, our user, like user model here, or even we can send, or even we can get through our authentication block, and it takes a lot of time, a lot of checkings. That is why it's better to just send our user model from user model. Because of that, we checked that from the I show you from we checked it from here. That is why it's better to send our user from here. So user model, state, user model. That's all. So widget user model. So widget user model and widget user model. That's all. Everything's working. So what else should we do? We have to do table. We added user ID. So that is why we have to go to our schema version. We have to change this one. Then come here and same as previous one. Like take this one, put it in here. Then adding in columns. So from 2 to 3 we can do sync, await migration, update, alter, schema, alter schema. What is that? Migration. It's our migration. Let's do it like this one. Migration, alter table, and schema users, schema user table, schema table. Add column to user table. We have to schema user table and user ID. We have to let him to compile. Something like that. What is the user ID? We don't need to user ID. You have to to-dos table. It's a to-dos table. What am I doing? So user ID. We have to add this one. Okay. No, not the video matching for the arguments. Okay, let's refresh it. So let's check our to-dos table. We have user ID. All of them are null. Because of that, we are created, and it's so when we create a new data, there is what after that it will be like something. That's all. There's a key event. Add Flutter. So after registration, we will send our current user, and we will check so first of all we have to check whether there is no any user like that one. Okay, so that is why we have to check here final database where element L is email equals contains, maybe it's better. Let's check. Okay, it's email and get. So there should be migrations, and also there should be double checking, like where maybe test migration. Expressions. Can do like this one. So if our user contains, there is a and the same thing, name and email are the same thing, or just email maybe. Let's use only name and email. So if there is a user, not get, I guess first. It's not get, it's I guess get single or null. Okay. So it returns a user table. Oh hey. So if user is not null, we can return that like this one, but using this user data. Okay. So and element surname contains surname. That is why I guess it should be another something else. Like you don't have to do single or null, exactly like there. But if surname, I guess, is not null, because of that our expression, our checking is still working. So can remove this. We can use user like this one, okay. Then user dot got gets single or null. Let me check. Then what? Like this one. Oh no. So let's go to our to-do block, and when we create our block, to the block, delete, update to do. Okay. So we have to use user ID here, state, this one, current state, user model.id. Okay, so for deleting we don't need anything. For changing, copy width, set ID. Okay, it's working. So let's go check in our repository. Create to do, update to do, local implementation. So for creating to do, let's check. This one is done. Okay, user ID to do, user ID. For updating, that's all I guess. Let's check, let's check. So we have this body, cb door. Email is test@gmail.com. Check. It didn't create anything. So that is why let's go for taking one. Select only those to-dos and user ID. Which user ID? This one. So that is why let's do it all. User ID, user ID, user ID. So user ID. For the repository, let's do this one, user ID. For the BLoC, it's just the user model event, user model ID. So that's all. So that is why for our database helper we write logic. Before getting them all, write where. So where our elements user ID equals to our user ID. So it doesn't have any value here right now. cp door test gmail.com doesn't have anything, so that is why. So that is why let's create task for user. So it created one. That's good. So that is why we have to put somewhere here our logout. That is why let's go to our to-dos widget, and in a app bar so we have to add our BLoC here, late final authentication BLoC. So we have the authentication BLoC dependency scope. You have to get through the dependency scope. Then in our actions we have to use BLoC builder. We have to use our BLoC and say that it's our authentication BLoC with authentication state. Say that switch state, if my state is authenticated, I will do something. So I can use like sized box, maybe size box shrink, or if it's some kind of another state case, I can use this one. I can use this one here, but up for this one, it means that for other states I use shrink, but for only for authentication state I will use like something like icon button, maybe icons dot logout, like something like this one. So what should I do for case? I can use circular progress indicator authentication for the case authentication in progress state. I can use return circular progress indicator size box width 15 with height of 15, child circular progress indicator with padding of only left or right 10, 15. Use this one. Okay, let's check this out. Sabador test a gmail.com. Let's log in, so it's good. We can use authentication block, add event, authentication event, logout. Let's check. Okay, it's checked, so it's working. So that is why BLoC builder, instead of BLoC builder, we will use BLoC listener, not listener, it's consumer, I guess. Consumer. So listen, we will listen whether our state is, if our state is not authenticated, so doesn't matter what is, no, not that. Is our state is authentication error state, or even state is authentication initial state, we have to once again do something. We have to, as we did here, we have to copy this from authentication widget, put inside here, and instead of to-dos widget, we have to redirect them to the authentication widget. So let's check. Sabador test gmail.com. Test Gmail. So Sabador without dashi. Okay, let's log out. Doesn't have anything, so we will. We are deleting that one. Don't have to delete this one, just log out. Okay, just log out. It's log out. We are removing it. Interesting. Let's not delete that, okay? Because if we are deleting them, we are losing all data there. So that is why log out should just return true, maybe, yeah. Because we are using delete, it's deleting, it's not delete user, it's deleting. Well, we also have to delete the to-dos table. Every data that contains user ID, our user ID, we have to delete them as well. That is why I wrote this code. But remember that we don't have to delete them. That is why we have to create another event, maybe just log out and delete. Maybe delete user. Log out should just log out. Should event. There should be another, like const factory authentication. It's not log out, it's delete user. It should be delete user. So in the BLoC we have to just change the places of our logout, and so it should be delete event, I guess. Delete user event. It's good. It's not logout. It should be delete user, I guess. It should be delete user. So that is why it's better to use our repository. I've changed all the name of our repositories, the delete user to the delete user. So we are deleting them. That is why. Delete user. But for the logout, you have to do something else. Just simple logic. It should contain for itself. It's just a simple logic for inside itself. Just copy them all, or just it represents the logout. That is why we don't have any server, some kind of things. That is why we will just use. So okay, let's for testing we will need this one. That is why we have to use future bool logout int id. So it will be necessary for me. So we have to add here as well. So that is why here we will imitate that we are making requests to the server, and then return true. So it's the same thing, I guess, you have to use, but not delete. It should log out. Like this one. So that's all. The same logic of this one, but instead of just log out, it will not delete anything. So I guess that's all. Let's check. Let's create a new gmail.com. Shall add this one. Let's check. It's working. So if I log out, it will just log out, won't it? Okay, it's logged out. So if I go to Sabadors, test@gmail.com, it should have another test for user, another test for user one, and it's checked one, the first one. So if I logged out, if it's a log out. So if I add Sabador and then test@gmail, test2 @gmail.com. If I use this email, let's check. Yeah, everything is working. So if I change my user once again, then I can see that there's a Sabador once again. Test@gmail.com. If there is no user, it will create. If there is a user, it will return that specific user, but that's specific to those items. Yeah, it's working pretty fine. So that is why. And it was, so let me so I showed you the specific how you can create and connect to blocks without just any like keeping the law of loose coupling and high cohesion. That is why you have to remember that no block should have any context, build context from everything that relates to the Flutter library. Block shouldn't have that, because there is a concept that it says about pops up pattern. Pops up pattern is about it's the programming pattern, I would say, that helps us to remove concurrency, race condition in some kind of place. For example, you click the same button twice, but what does the Flutter do itself? If you are not using any pops up pattern, it will call the same function twice at the same time, I would say. But it's about the event loop, how it works, something like that. But when you wrote the same button twice, for example, it's doing same logic, it will be like it will be not clear to the user what's happening. For example, it's going like loading, it's loading. Suddenly, the first answer from the server, response from the server was successful, and it didn't take a long time. From the response from the server didn't take a long time. And the second time that you clicked, it took a lot of time. For example, even the first one just already finished, the second one not, but you will see a loading again, and you will see a success again, and it will be not clear. That is why, in order to not do that, you have to create a Boolean variable that checks whether the same function to the user is requesting to the server. The same function is still requesting to the server or not. You have to check them to the with the user with the separate variable. That is why pops up pattern is some kind of pattern that helps us to prevent, I would say, this concurrency. It's good. That is why I always use any pattern that uses pops up pattern. So more information about pops up pattern you can look to this website. I will put this link down to the description, down below the description. Like there is a plug Fox. Just look at him, business logic component. Yeah, I guess that it's very too long ago, like 3 years ago, almost 3 years ago. Just doesn't matter. Just read him. Just watch, go throughout the article. Just take a look how it works. Ask everyone. You can even ask me in the description how it works, or even I will put the link in the description, the Telegram channel of that community, Flutter community. So that is why. And another thing that we have to do, that is why we'll do that very quickly. So we have to write tests. Yeah, I guess that in this course we will not write any tests here. It was the main reason that I recorded this video. It was to show you how to properly handle your exceptions, especially in BLoC, like adding an error, then in your BLoC observer handling them, sending them to some kind of Crashlytics, whatever you want. It was the first reason, and the second reason was to creating another feature that will be connected to each other with to-dos and authentication, for example. And I created authentication widget, and you can use this authentication widget anywhere in your application. So if you're using a lot of screens, so you can use that authenticated BLoC anywhere you want, doing like this one. Like, let me show. Like this one. Because of that, we are adding our authentication BLoC in our dependency scope, and dependency scope is inherited widget. It's wrapped up our material app, and that is why all the dependencies that are inside dependency container will be visible anywhere in your application. That is why right now it's enough. It's enough to just was enough lesson to you that you see that there is authentication to those widget. In the next lesson, in the next video, I'm going to show you how to create test for your BLoCs, datas, widgets. I will show you. So that is why. Thank you very much for now.